The sun stopped shining for me is all. The whole story is, I am sad. I am sad all the time, and the sadness is so heavy, I can't get away from it. Not ever. Depression is such a cruel punishment. There are no fevers, no rashes, no blood tests to send people scurrying in concern. Just a slow erosion of self, as insidious as cancer. And like cancer, it is essentially a solitary experience, a room in hell with only your name on the door. Hey guys, my name is Melissa Black, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of Melissa Explains It All. In today's video, I'm explaining depression. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 300 million people worldwide battle with depression each year. In the United States, the number is about 17.3 million people, or 7.1% of the U.S. population of adults. Women are nearly twice as likely to suffer from depression than men, accounting for 8.7% of women compared to 5.3% of men. It is believed that biological, hormonal, and other factors unique to women are the cause for this discrepancy. 35% of people battling with depression will not receive any treatment for their condition. And the chances of you having depression in your lifetime is about 10%. But what about the kids? Well, about 3.2 million kids in the United States battle with depression each year. This accounts for about 13.3% of the population ages 12 to 17. Just like with adults, girls are twice as likely than boys to suffer from depression, with a staggering 20% of girls compared to only 6.8% of boys. 60% of these children will not receive any treatment for their condition. 60%. I mean, sweet baby Jesus, that's a lot of kids that don't receive any help. I can't help but make the correlation between the fact that the number one killer of adolescents and teenagers in this country is suicide, and then 60% don't receive any treatment for their depression. Although anxiety is the number one mental illness in the United States, depressive disorders are not far behind. A depressive disorder is characterized by a persistent feeling of sadness or worthlessness and a lack of desire to perform daily or pleasurable activities. It can last weeks, months, or even years. Some people will have more than one depressive episode in their lifetimes. It is not a passing blue mood. Everybody has those. It's instead a complex mind and body illness that interferes with everyday functioning. It not only darkens the mood, but can cause physical symptoms such as sleep changes, body aches, changes in appetite, and a whole multitude of other symptoms. It actually alters the structure of the nerve cells in your brain so that it disrupts how your brain processes information and interprets experiences. So what causes depression? Well, science isn't entirely sure, but they believe that it is a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and psychological factors. Science is sure that there's not just one gene responsible for depression. Instead, they believe that it is a combination of many genes, and each one plays a small factor in depression. Just because you have these genes doesn't mean that you will automatically have depression, but it does make the likelihood much greater. Researchers using brain imaging technology such as magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, have discovered that the brain of a depressed person looks very different than the brain of a person without depression. It appears that the parts of the brain responsible for regulating emotion, mood, behavior, appetite, sleep, all function abnormally when compared to a person without depression. But these changes don't tell us why depression occurs. There are many pathways to depression. Prolonged social stress or a loss of social ties are known factors for depression. Major life-changing events such as loss of a job, loss of a loved one, also increases the chances significantly. Severe adversity early in life, such as the loss of a parent or neglect and abuse, are also factors linked to depression. It's believed that these early experiences make the body hyperactive when it comes to responding to stress. Experiences of failure, rejection, loss, or frustration with achieving life goals or a relationship with somebody often precedes a bout with depression. For that reason, many researchers believe that depression is actually a way of your brain crying out for a psychological need that is not being met. They also suggest that depression is a result of what they call negative thought patterns. That's why many of the most effective treatments for depression teach what's called basic mental hygiene. It's reteaching your brain to deal with these negative feelings. Some of the symptoms of depression are persistent, sad, anxious, or empty mood most of the day, pretty much every day. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt, loss of interest and pleasure in activities that were once enjoyed, persistent lack of energy and fatigue, difficulty in thinking, concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, insomnia, morning wakening, or sleeping too much, also known as hypersomnia. Significant changes in appetite resulting in unintended weight loss or weight gain. Observable psychomotor agitation or restlessness, or slowing of your physical responses. Feelings of hopelessness and pessimism. Reoccurring thoughts of death or suicide, and possibly suicide attempts. That's a lot of symptoms, and it doesn't even cover them all. Depression can be difficult to diagnose because not everyone who has depression experiences all these symptoms. Some people may have many of them or even all of them, and other people may only have one or two. Several persistent symptoms that last for 2 weeks or longer is mandatory to diagnose depression. The severity and the frequency of the symptoms will depend on both the individual and the type of illness that they have. There are many depressive disorders, and today I just want to touch on a few of the more common ones. Major depressive disorder. Major depression, also called major depressive disorder or MDD, is a severe form of depression. This is what most people think of when they think about someone being depressed. It is definitely the most common type of depressive disorder, and it doesn't matter if you have a great life, loving friends and family, and the kind of life that other people envy. You can still be depressed. Persistent depressive disorder. Persistent depressive disorder, or PPD, is a depression that lasts for 2 years or longer. Over the period of having this depression, symptoms can worsen and get better, and at times you will even go into a major depression, which they call double depression. Also called dysthymia, this type of depression lasts for years at a time, and people may actually think that this is just their outlook on life and that they're just a negative person as opposed to being depressed. Bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder used to be called manic depression. It is characterized by a bout of mania where you're very happy and energetic, and then followed by a period of depression. And these depressive episodes can be as bad as major depressive disorder. In order to be diagnosed as bipolar 1, which I have, you have to have a manic period that lasts at least 7 days, sometimes less if you are hospitalized. And this is preceded or followed by a bout of depression. Now, a mania is interesting, and the symptoms of it are high energy, reduced sleep, irritability, grandiose thinking, a euphoria. I mean, it's almost like being high. It really is. In really severe cases, mania can cause hallucinations or delusions. Hypomania, which is also mostly what I experience, is not as severe a form of mania, but it still can interfere with daily life. You can also have mixed episodes where you're manic and you're depressed at the same time. There are many types of bipolar disorder, and I will touch on that in a later video. Perinatal depression. Perinatal depression is a type of depression that is unique to pregnant women or women who have just given birth. Most people think of postpartum depression, but postpartum depression only happens after a woman gives birth. Hormonal changes that happen during pregnancy or right after you have a baby is thought to be one cause, and it doesn't help either the lack of sleep and discomfort of being both pregnant and dealing with a crying newborn. The symptoms of perinatal depression can be just as severe as major depressive disorder, and if it's left untreated, it can actually turn into perinatal psychosis. This is usually when you end up seeing news stories of a woman who killed her child because it was possessed by the devil. Seasonal depression. Seasonal depression, or seasonal affective disorder, SAD, is a type of depression that changes according to the time of year. Some people will begin to get depressed in the fall, and it will worsen as the winter goes along. And then when spring rolls around, they start to feel better. Researchers think that seasonal affective disorder is caused by the changes in our body rhythms as we gain and lose sunlight over the course of the season. The good news in all of this is that depression is a highly treatable disorder. Usually there's a combination of medications, psychotherapy involved. You can maybe just respond to medications, or you may have to do both. Personally, I do both. I do therapy and I take medications, and that's what works best for me. But it may not work best for you, and usually there's a lot of trial and error involved until you find a treatment that does work for you. In severe cases that don't respond to antidepressants or therapy, there is also the option of using electroconvulsive therapy. And yes, I mean shock treatments. But these are not the type of treatments that you see in the movies, and it's way more precise. And they put you to sleep for it, and you're not sitting there with something between your mouth going, ugh. Okay, it's not like that. I've actually been around someone who was getting electric shock treatments when I was in the hospital, and the worst that happened to her was maybe a little short-term memory loss and kind of dazed for a day, but it didn't like severely traumatize her or anything like that. Medications are like the frontline defense for depression. They alter the way that your body uses certain chemicals in the brain. Usually, and this part sucks, you have to try more than one antidepressant to find the one that works the best. You usually have to give it a month or two before you know if that antidepressant is working for you. And usually some of the physical symptoms like sleep problems and appetite will get better before your mood actually gets better. I also have to tell you that if you do start taking antidepressants, don't just stop suddenly. This can cause you to have a intense worsening of symptoms and even withdrawals. Something else that's important to remember when it comes to medications is that it can sometimes cause an increase in suicidal thoughts and behavior, especially amongst the elderly and the very young. But don't let this stop you from giving antidepressants a chance, because they really can help. Psychotherapy is also called talk therapy. This is where an individual talks either one-on-one or in a group of people to a trained psychologist or other type of mental health professional. Psychotherapy is considered to be an effective treatment because it delves into the underlying reasons for a person's depression, and then it also teaches new ways to deal with negative emotions. And my personal favorite type of psychotherapy is called dialectic behavioral therapy. It not only teaches new ways to deal with negative emotions, it also uses practices from Buddhist traditions such as mindfulness and meditation. And that's what works for me. But there are many different types of psychotherapies, and once again, you just have to find the one that works best for you. Okay, so because I intend for all this to be a personal journey from myself, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my own battle with depression. I was depressed as a teenager, but I didn't know what it was. I just knew I felt different from everyone else. There was some childhood trauma involved, but that's not something that I'm going to get into right now because there are people involved that are still alive and I care about them and I don't want to cause them any pain. One of those people that hurt me is burning in hell right now, so there's that. I muddled through until I was 23, and that's when the foundation that I had built my life on crumbled. I had left graduate school and come home to learn my family's business. I was only home for about 2 months when my dad had a massive heart attack, and then 3 months later he was dead. I not only leapt or jumped off the deep end, I ran screaming for the edge. About a week after my dad died, I was extremely erratic and I was self-harming myself very badly. So naturally, my family sent me to a psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist immediately hospitalized me. When I went into the hospital, I had over 200 self-inflicted injuries on my body. I got a little better, but I still had some bouts of self-harm and seriously scary behavior. It ended up affecting the relationships I had with my mom and with my brothers, and also I lost some friends. Then I met my husband and I rebuilt the foundation of my life around him and later on my kids. It's a little scary sometimes to think that my happiness, or a large part of my happiness, depends on just a few people, but it's better than what I had before. And John has stuck through having suicidal behavior and thoughts and crazy mood swings and anger and several hospitalizations. He stood by me the whole time. After we got married, and actually a little before we got married, we were trying to have a child. And they told me I needed hormone therapy, so we stopped trying for a while. And this was about 4 years after we started. We decided we would stop trying and save up money for me to get hormone treatments. But about a month, maybe 2 months after we stopped trying, I got pregnant. And I became determined to get better. And I actually came off all my medications, and I really was a lot better for a long time. I suddenly started doing some really stupid shit. I was burning bridges left and right, incinerating them in some cases. I'll never get those relationships back to what they were before. Eventually, I was almost arrested. I went in the hospital for 10 days. When I got out of the hospital, I went to an outpatient hospitalization program. This is where you go to a group therapy all day and you go home at night. While I was in this outpatient program, I had a wonderful art therapist. One day, she asked us to make a model that represented our depression. I made a whale with a completely black bottom. When it was my turn to talk, I said that my depression was like being at the bottom of the deepest, darkest well. It's kind of like Plato's cave, except instead of looking at shadows on wall, all I saw was darkness. It's cold down there, and something whispers to me in the dark, and it tells me that I'm a horrible person, that I'm a burden to everyone, that I don't deserve happiness and I don't deserve love. However, far above me is a shaft of light. And if I manage to look up, I can see my husband and my children leaning over the edge of that opening and beckoning to me. I ached to join them, but I was paralyzed by fear. Eventually, over a good deal of time, and thanks to the people that love me unconditionally, I did climb out of that well. There have been ups and downs since then, good times and bad. I've even been hospitalized a couple more times, but I never fell all the way down into that well. I have teeter-tottered on the edge quite a few times, but I never fell. One of the things that I have carried over from my extensive therapy is called positive affirmations. This is writing out some of your good qualities to give you that boost every day against negative feelings. Mine hang on my refrigerator, so I see them every day, usually first thing in the morning. And they're even more special because my husband wrote them. And this is what my daily affirmations are. You are not stupid. You are not ugly. You are not worthless. You are not weak. You are not a burden. Your anxiety is lying to you. I told you my affirmations because I want you to take them to heart. They are true for everyone. Remember that no video and no website can diagnose you with depression. You have to see a medical professional. And if you think you might be depressed, please seek help. It could save your life. This video barely scratches the surface of depressive disorders. I plan on making more videos about treatment options and even some ways of dealing with depression on a day-to-day basis. Well, y'all, that's the end of this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative. Please like, subscribe, and punch that notification bell so you won't miss the next video. Leave your comments and suggestions down below if there's a topic that you would like me to attempt to explain. I promise to do my best. And I hope y'all have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.